So this third video, again, these videos I'm basing off an article I found just perusing the internet, and the title I'll put it in the comment or in the details below. Is I've studied over 200 kids. The ones with high emotional intelligence have parents who do 7 things early on. Okay, and if you haven't done these early on, don't be worried. You can still do these with older kids. It might be a little different. Um, you're kind of it's a bit like you're reteaching them certain things. So, it might take a little bit more effort to do it. But I these are things that I think most adults can benefit from learning. That's one of the reasons I'm doing this. It's for parents, but it's also for everyone. So, this is the third thing that parents would do with highly emotional or high emotional intelligence kids, right? This is something that their parents did with them, and this is to apologize to their child. This is one that I had my own experience with apologies, of being wrong, of making mistakes. I used to be super super critical on myself, and I don't know that my parents were not critical of me. Perhaps I saw how they were critical for themselves. Um, and maybe that's where I kind of picked it up because as children, we are just soaking up experiences. So, there's this old adage or old expression, do as I say, not as I do. But that's not, we do not learn from really what people say. It's from what we experience. As parents, we're always modeling behavior more so than what we say. Like we say, don't do that, but then they watch us do it. They're not really learning not to do it. They're like, "Oh, mom's saying that," but unconsciously they're like, "Well, that's not what mom or dad is doing." Okay? So that's not how they learn. So apologizing, it does many things. It helps um, if there's upset with my son, and I won't apologize unless it's authentic because I think we can become overly apologetic as well. In a case where I haven't done something wrong, but I can see how my behavior impacted my son. I'll be like, "Oh, that looks really upsetting. I bet that was hard." Right? I'm sorry that it's hard for you. So I'm apologizing, I guess maybe overly a little bit, but I'm not necessarily like making it my responsibility because I think that robs our children of responsibility. But when I do make a mistake, like I raise my voice when it wasn't appropriate, which is pretty much always unless my child's in danger, I think. And it's also human to get upset. And I think it's important our children see that. So I don't want to give the idea that we always need to be perfect. That's certainly not the case. And this is a good case for apologizing is like, yeah, we're human, but it doesn't mean we can't own up to our um, imperfections in relationship, especially with someone we care about, our children, our partners. It's like, oh, yeah, you know what? Like, it's okay that I got upset, but I can also see the impact. And it's like, oh, yeah, you know what? I made a mistake in this relationship, so to speak. Or it's not even within the relationship all the time. It's like, oh, yeah, I thought I knew the answer to that question and I answered it, but I was wrong. This really gives our children permission for them not to be perfect, because as parents, we're not perfect. I hate to I hate to burst your bubble, but you're not perfect. I'm not perfect. And that's actually a beautiful thing in my mind. And I recognize for a lot of people that it can be really hard to admit that. Maybe they grew up in a family where making mistakes was harshly criticized, and so they don't have this permission for themselves. But by owning up to our mistakes, by apologizing, like, oh, I'm sorry that I raised my voice. I'm sorry I got upset with you. I'm sorry that, I haven't had as much time to spend with you. I've been busy with work. Maybe that's the apology. It doesn't mean that work isn't important. It doesn't mean that, we need to like really get upset with ourselves. But what I think we're telling in the relationship with our child is that, hey, you matter to me. And, it's more, our relationship is more important than me being right. And that's a hard one for a lot of people. Being right, I think, is how a lot of people of my generation and other generations have been raised. It's like that the parents are always right. The parents know best, right? These expressions. But the truth is we don't always know. We're humans, we're making mistakes, we're always learning too. And if we can take that approach, it can take a lot of the pressure off. I had my son recently, actually his mom shared it with me and then him and I talked about it. And he said that he feels a lot of pressure to be a certain way with me, even though I apologize. So even though I do this, um, it can still be hard. And I brought my curiosity to that conversation. And I noticed he opened up a bit, right? It doesn't mean it's all good. Um, our relationships, our dynamics that we form with all people, they're built over a long period of time, and they're also impacted by our previous experiences in relationship. And so, if we make a change, we often feel like we should be seeing the results, like, oh, I apologize once for this thing, and our child should just feel okay. But it's often more complicated than that. Emotions are more complicated than that. But that doesn't mean that the apology or the admitting of a mistake, um, taking responsibility for our part of the situation, of the experience, of the relationship isn't important, because it is. But it doesn't mean that it's going to fix everything, at least not right away. Relationships are built of many, many experiences. But we are sending a message to our child that it's okay to be, imperfect. It's okay to make mistakes, but we can own up to them. We can be responsible for our part in our relationships and our experiences with other people. Can you imagine a world where everyone was more or less responsible for their own experience? It's going to be a very different world than I experience in a lot of ways, right? And there's lots of good reasons for that. Trauma is a huge one. But building these different types of relationships, and I think a good place to start is with our kids, changes things. Then really hard things can happen, but there can be understanding and acceptance more so, rather than needing to, you know, have a firm stance, a definite resolve. Like, no, this is hard. I did make a mistake and I'm sorry because you matter to me. And again, this might be a really hard thing for you to do. So often bringing these things to our kids, the hardest part is for us to make some kind of peace with it. Like, how do you feel about apologizing? Does it feel like a failure? Does it feel like, um, you should have all the answers and be this thing for your kids? I think a lot of parents do, and that's okay. I still feel like that, even though I know all this stuff. I still often feel like I've let my son down when I have to apologize for something, like, right? But it builds trust, it builds respect, and we're modeling how to be in relationship. Relationship isn't about perfection. It's about meeting the other person, showing our care, taking responsibility for our part in the relationship. So I hope that makes sense. I'll see you in the next video.